Here we are, and it's just a real pleasure to introduce today our speaker, who is Ashli Ahrens. She lives in Little Rock, Arkansas. We got to know Ashli even before she came to the Wichita Postcard Club show last October as a dealer. But we got to know her from Zoom meetings like this. The beautiful red hair and uh, terrific personality and knowledge about postcards and different interest areas and so forth. But she agreed to be our speaker today, and she's going to be talking about the accidental Deltiologist. And so I think I'll just turn it over to you, Ashli, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Hal. I appreciate that very generous introduction very much. And thank you to everyone who's here today. I'm so happy to have a good crowd and looking forward to sharing my story with you. And that's actually what this is. This is the origin story of my journey into being a postcard collector and other things related to that now. So I'll start my presentation in a sec, but I just want to say that it's not a typical type of postcard presentation that we have at these meetings. I'm not going to take a deep dive into a particular publisher or a particular subject. It is just going to be how I got into this hobby unexpectedly. That's why it's called the accidental Deltiologist. So, there you go. There's my title slide, the accidental Deltiologist, and how living in a 1920s hotel launched a hobby, actually more than one. You know how those things go, right? You start down one path and here comes another. So I'll tell you how that went. So it does begin with a 1920s hotel, and it's this hotel in downtown Little Rock. It's the Lafayette Hotel, it opened in 1925. And the slide gives you some information about the hotel. It does still exist. This is exactly how it looks. And it's a 12-story hotel, including a basement. When the hotel first opened, it was $2.50 a night to stay in one of their 300 rooms, which after living in this place, which I'll tell you about in a minute, I don't know how they got 300 rooms in that place. They must have been closets. But anyway, they had 300 rooms. It was in a bustling part of downtown where a lot of salesmen were coming and going. There was a theater across the street, two more theaters, one street over. Lots going on in our downtown, Little Rock, as I'm sure is the case in everyone else's downtown during that time. Now, the Depression and war had, and wars had an impact on the business, of course. And so in this case, it closed down in 1933 as a hotel. It ceased, but then it reopened in 1941 and then continued to operate as a hotel until the 70s, until early 70s. This is actually a picture of how the lobby of the Lafayette building looks today. It's not operating as a hotel now, but in the I'm sorry, I should say that the other slide talked about this slide talks about the original amenities that were in the hotel. They had circulating ice water, which was promoted as a way of early type of air conditioning. They had a coffee shop, barber shop, telegram office, those kind of cool things that were necessary in those days for travelers. Even though it closed as a hotel in 73, in the 80s in downtown Little Rock and in our historic neighborhoods nearby, there was a big resurgence of restoration and people paying attention to that. And so thank goodness the lobby in the Lafayette had that opportunity and it was restored in 81. And this is how it looks today, like in this picture. In 2008, the upper floors were converted into condos, and then the middle floors were turned into offices. There were a lot of businesses, even a jewelry store, various businesses that were in the middle floors, and then the upper floors were turned into condos. My husband Kelly and I bought an upper floor condo on the 7th floor in 2011. Now, those condos were bigger than what those little 300 hotel rooms must have been. I don't know how many rooms they combined to make our condo, but it was not as small as their hotel rooms were. And we loved living at the Lafayette. We lived there for 8 years. And the only reason we moved in 2019 to where we are now is because I began working from home and I needed space for a home office. And I also wanted some outside space, which the Lafayette did not have any outside balconies or anything. But we love living downtown. So this is the setting for where my postcard journey begins, is us living in this former hotel. that still had a lot of the same characters at the hotel. So when we moved in there, I started getting really interested in the hotel's history and learned about that. And I'm interested in history in general. I did not grow up in Little Rock, and so I had never lived in downtown Little Rock before. And I became just really interested in all of it. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be neat to find some items from when the Lafayette was operating as a hotel? You know, the kind of things that hotels would have had during those days. And of course, where did I turn? Turn to eBay. And sure enough, postcards from the hotel were the easiest thing to find. We all know how that is and why that is, because every hotel and motel in the country love to have postcards and stationery in the rooms for free so people could send postcards and letters from where they were staying. So it was really, really easy for me to quickly come up with what I finally found and figured out were 5 different iterations of Lafayette Hotel postcards that were available during its history when postcards were popular. I'm showing 3 of them here. And I was thrilled to find those postcards. And it was on the back of those cards that I learned about the $2.50 a room and the circulating ice water and all the amenities they had. And some of the cards also tell who the manager was at the time. So that helps me determine when the card was published. So the easiest thing for me to find were the postcards for sure. And so that started my collecting of Lafayette postcards. And I kind of injected a little sideline here. I wanted to show you my most recent acquisition of a Lafayette postcard that I consider it. This is, you can probably figure out, this was a promotional card that was sent out by the Twin City Stamp Club. We have Little Rock and the city of North Little Rock that are across the river from each other. So we had a Twin City Stamp Club apparently in the 50s when this was sent out, and they were hosting Topex stamp show in 1958, but it was being held in the Skyway, which is like the mezzanine of the Hotel Lafayette in 58. And I just recently found this on eBay. I was so happy to find it. And you can see they had a nice special cancellation for that show. But I want to put this in right after showing you my initial Lafayette Hotel postcards, because honestly, I thought I'd found every version of a Lafayette Hotel postcard that could be found. Didn't expect to find something like this. It's a philately and Deltiology combo, but I was really thrilled to find it. So anyway, postcards were the easiest for me to find when I started this whole collection. Or when I started down this path. But so I had the Lafayette Hotel postcards, but then I started looking around at postcards from Main Street, downtown Little Rock, which is just 1 block over from the street that this hotel faces on. So I was like, all right, maybe I need to start looking around for some Little Rock postcards. And then also I started looking for more Lafayette Hotel items, like I mentioned earlier, the kind of things you would look for from a hotel. So this is where this whole hobby just launches, right? So the first thing I started collecting were the Lafayette postcards. Then, as I said, I started looking around at other Little Rock postcards to add to that. And I started looking for Lafayette items. So I'm going to tell you more about both of these, but this is just kind of a visual how that thing bifurcated off, and I went in 2 different directions from the initial starting point. Speaking of Little Rock postcards, this is how this went. When I was like I said, I had my Lafayette Hotel postcards. I started looking at postcards of Main Street, Little Rock, which is this, what you see on the left here. This is Main Street right down the middle. And I found postcards of Main Street that had the Lafayette in view. See, I've got an arrow pointing there. I'm like, well, I have to get the postcards that have the Lafayette visible, don't I, to have a complete collection? There's a beautiful Catholic church that's right next to the Lafayette. And what do you know? That church postcard shows the Lafayette in that view. So here I go. I'm looking all over and got all I think I can find of all postcards that aren't Lafayette postcards, but show the hotel from downtown. So that was one tangent. Still kind of continues to this day. And then that just sent me down the path of collecting Little Rock postcards. So I want to show you a few, so very few of the ones that are in my collection. And we'll get to the one that I talked to Hal about in the Postcard of the Week episode promoting this talk, but it'll come up in a little bit. But anyway, I love these multi-view cards that show, various buildings of Little Rock. And then the one on the left is the state capitol, which is in Little Rock. And I hope that a lot of you have similar templated type of postcards that were customized for your towns that you collect. I really love having this Little Rock Bells postcard on the left, and then I guess it's a pansy there with a woman in the middle and the images of the buildings and bridges around Little Rock there. So happy to have those in my collection. Also have, understandably, since Little Rock is the capital city and the Capitol building is here, there are a lot of postcards of the Capitol building. But some of my most favorite ones are these two. Obviously, the one on the left is a real photo postcard, and you can tell by the lack of vegetation or even sidewalks or roads around that Capitol building that this was really early, actually before the Capitol building opened. After construction looks like it was finished, but the building wasn't open. So I'm really thrilled to have that real postcard, real photo postcard. It was not mailed, so I don't have a date, but I believe I looked at it today and all of the, it's an ASO stamp back and all the triangles are up. So it's really early. And then the one on the right is a much later real photo postcard. I could tell by the Kodak paper that it was made of, but somebody literally, like they have a map of Arkansas in the back and they got a seal and pasted that on there and then the word Arkansas and then had a real photo somehow, that they had imposed on there and on top of it of the Capitol and then published a bunch of postcards with it. I just think it's a great, long before the days of all the Photoshop and all the things we can do, somebody, pasted these together just like they did with images in newspapers and stuff. So I just thought that was neat. So those are a couple of those cards. Here's a couple of other multi-views. Love the one on the left because it really packed about as many images of buildings and attractions in Little Rock as you could on one card. And it was mailed and had a message on the back, but you see the little space they left at the bottom for people to write messages on probably before they were printed and divided back. So they didn't write anything there. The one on the right is fabulous too. This is the Broadway Bridge. It crosses the Arkansas River between North Little Rock and North Little Rock, like I mentioned before. But I love that it has these insets also of the views from atop this bridge. This one says approach to the new Broadway Bridge from the Little Rock side, and then the other is the approach of the new Broadway Bridge from the North Little Rock side. And I'll give a little teaser to a program that I presented back in October to the San Jose Postcard Club about the development of North Little Rock, Arkansas, in a particular area where there's a neighborhood and some attractions. And if you watch that video, which I hope you do, it wasn't until I was looking and getting ready for this presentation that I looked at this card and I noticed this note right here that says copyright 1923 by J.E. Matthews, Little Rock, Arkansas. And that's Justin Matthews, who developed a lot of the attractions that I talked about in the neighborhoods I talked about in that presentation. And it wasn't until I was getting ready for this today that I realized this was a postcard that he had produced because he was involved, Mr. Matthews, was involved in getting this bridge built and making North Little Rock more accessible to get to the neighborhoods he was developing. So even though I've had this card in my collection for years now, learned something new and it was sitting right there in front of me. So little side note there. So I love those cards. I'll show you now a few Main Street views. As I said, Main Street was just one block behind or one block away from where we were living in the Lafayette. And I've got 4 Main Street views to show you, generally in age order. Like the one on the left is a real photo. Super happy to have this postcard. Haven't really come across another one. I've seen lots of copies, but haven't really come across another real photo one of this. I'm thrilled to have this view on the left. The one on the right is a Detroit Publishing Company postcard. Beautiful, beautiful card, and I adore it. And that's just a little bit later. Then we have the coveted night views of downtown and love the cars. Doesn't that look like 30s? 30s or 40s, I guess. And it's a beautiful view. And then on the right, we've got, a little bit older chrome, maybe 50s, you tell me, but has the round corners and a good view of downtown. So I'm really happy to have these. No Lafayette in view, but I know it's there, even though you can't see it. So now that was just my whole Little Rock collection, jaunt that I went on and still on. And so now I have a thick album of Little Rock postcards. And a few years ago, one of our local society magazines and culture magazines did a nice spread about my Little Rock postcard collection. And you can see that's what that image on the left is. It's that spread they had of some of my postcards. And then you can still find that story online. The link is there and I'm happy to share it with anybody if you want to look at it. So that was fun to get that recognition and exposure. So that's Little Rock postcards that started from just the Lafayette. So here we are, back to my illustration. Covered the Little Rock side. Now we're gonna see what's next. Here's the Lafayette items. So we're getting away from postcards for a second, but I just want to show you some of the items that I've collected over the years from the Lafayette Hotel. The far left is a key fob that I was really happy to find. I do have silverware now that has the hotel name on it. I have the little soaps that it's hard to believe now because we never see it. But back in the day, hotels would have ivory soap custom print their little wrappers and have the Lafayette Hotel covers on all the soap. And so I have 2 soaps that were never unwrapped that somebody took out of the hotel. So I'm happy to have those. I have some promotional materials. I have bathroom glasses, what I call the little glasses, ashtrays, matchbooks, and a lot more actually. I have a luggage tag, a luggage sticker that was never put on luggage. Have some wonderful, wonderful collection. Really, really happy to have it. Most items were found on eBay, of course. I still get daily alerts from eBay, happy to tell me what people are trying to sell. Usually I resist, but not always, like that postcard I just found that I showed you. Friends and family have also found items for me and give them to me. So that's great. I love my hotel collection. But it didn't stop there. Look at this screen. Look at this screen. This is my diagram when I sat down and started thinking about what I've gotten myself into from those first Lafayette Hotel postcards. So you can see this was a start, and then it went to the Little Rock postcards. And then now we've got various other areas that we are not going to talk about all of them today, but I've kind of outlined what has happened to me with this, happily. On the right here, you can see all the areas that start with the word collecting. These are the things that I now collect. I have a lot of just general state of Arkansas cards, not Little Rock specific, but state cards, including postcards and Victorian trade cards. That I think there's whole state collections of those for all the states, but I have Arkansas ones, several of those. I also have begun collecting and have a pretty good collection of postage stamps, not only that say Arkansas on them, vintage postage stamps, but also stamps that represent things that are indicative of Arkansas or related to Arkansas. I don't have those in a nice presentation in my little stock book, but I've got them. And so I hope to get that in a little better shape. But that's been interesting to kind of chase some of those down. I do collect postcards from my hometown of Stuttgart, which is an hour away from here, and the county that is in. And then I started, when I was looking at all these postcards, I started noticing slogan cancels and pictorial cancels on the back of postcards. So I have an album I've started of collecting those. So those are the things I collect. On this side, though, you can see the other tangents that this has gone on, and I've grouped these into learning and speaking. I'll talk about some of those in a minute. And it's almost inevitable, really. Maybe some people are better at resisting it than I am, but I've also turned into selling postcards. So I'll talk about that a little bit too. But anyway, for those following along at home, this is my journey in a graphic. First thing I want to talk about, though, you'll see circled on the left, is I want to tell you something I learned regarding postmarks and cancellations from studying postcards. Early on, when I was starting to learn about postcards, I was curious about the cancellations and learning about those when I would look at the back sides of postcards. And I came across this book, and maybe you all know about this, especially those of you who are more into philately and stamp collecting and postal history. So this book, Postmarks on Postcards, was published in 2002. But I was looking through it and learning about the different types of cancellations and the machines and all that kind of stuff. And I flipped through and I got to this page here that was talking about unusual types of postcard design or cancellation designs. And shockingly, I see this section about this particular cancellation that is called the Star in Diamonds machine cancel, produced by the Columbia cancellation machine, postcard cancellation machine, date stamp, whatever. So here I am, I'm reading this book and I see this and I think, I wonder if any of my postcards I've bought so far have this cancellation on it or not. So at that time, I maybe had 20, 25 Little Rock postcards, and I went flipping through, and I did. I had one that had this cancellation. And what's remarkable about this is this cancellation was only used for 2 years in Little Rock by the downtown post office for 2 years. And then it was only ever used in one other city in the United States, and that's the Silver Creek, New York. So it's a scarce postcard or cancellation. So when I was flipping back through the postcards I had at that time, this might have been in, I don't know, 2013. This postcard that I talked to Hal about on Postcard of the Week this last week, it was this beautiful multi-view card, and this is the one that had this perfectly stamped example of this cancel on the back. And so I was thrilled to read the book and then learn something about something I already had. So keep your eye out for this. For if you have any postcards sent through the Little Rock, sent out of Little Rock, Arkansas between 1906 and 1907, you might have one. And if you find one from Silver Springs, New York that has this cancel, please let me know. I will buy that from you. I have not come across one. Embarrassed to say that when I was at Wichita at the postcard show, millions of postcards in the room where I was, did I think to look for this, for the New York version of this? No. I'll have to come back and do that in the future. But now, in addition to that one that I showed you, I do have 6 in my collection now, and I'm always on the lookout for more. I think it's a really neat cancellation. And if you don't know, Arkansas has the only publicly available diamond mine where you can go and dig for diamonds and take home anything you find. And so I'm sure that is why this design was chosen by Little Rock, by the downtown post office, to be used. Now, I don't know why the folks in Silver Springs, New York did, but maybe there's something somebody can tell me. So that's that little tangent. Back to the drawing, back to my graphic. Now I want to talk about how I got involved in postcard clubs. That's why we're here today. That's why I'm here today, for sure. So really happy to have learned that you guys existed. I was going along for years here with my postcard collection growing, my postcard knowledge growing. I had started selling postcards a little bit at some vintage fairs that we would have, but I really felt like kind of like the Lone Ranger here that was a postcard person. I knew of one other person who had been collecting postcards for a long time, and I met with him and visited with him, but that was it. So during COVID, as horrible, of course, as that was, a shining light came through the darkness, and that was postcard clubs like the Wichita Postcard Club, San Jose, Western New York, and Capital Beltway, who you see here. I learned that these postcard clubs existed and that they were having meetings on Zoom, and even though I wasn't local, I could join, and I did, and I'm here, and I'm still here, and have really, 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 really enjoyed getting to know those of you that I know through these clubs, and certainly have my life enriched and my knowledge enriched about postcards, and it's just absolutely been a thrill. So it's been another really surprising and happy part of my journey. So I want to give a shout out to those folks, and I know there's other postcard clubs I can join, and I probably will, since we have none in Arkansas. No, and I'm not interested in starting one here. So I'm really happy to have these opportunities with you all. Speaking of, postcard clubs and all that, I've also gotten to make presentations besides here today. Happy to do this. The very first club I joined was San Jose, and that was also the first postcard presentation I made online to a postcard club. And so since then, I have presented twice to San Jose, once to you guys here today, and I have gotten to do some local in-person presentations as well, and that's been a lot of fun. People are always interested in postcards, so that's been a lot of fun. And I did actually get to do a podcast. So let me tell you about what's on the screen. Here on the right, you see this Lafayette postcard. In November, I gave a presentation to our local county historical society. It's this same presentation, but I went a little deeper into the Little Rock postcards because they knew those places. Then it was October. I did the presentation to San Jose about this North Little Rock and Little Rock land developer, Mr. Matthews, I mentioned earlier when I was showing you about the bridge. And then during COVID, when was the date on this? It was 2018. It was before COVID. I actually got to be interviewed by a man named Frank Roche, who was at that time doing a postcard podcast called The Postcardist, and he did 100 episodes of it, and it's still available, even though he's not adding new episodes to it now. But I actually got to do 2 podcast interviews with him. This one that's shown here was essentially going through what I'm telling you about today with my journey into collecting postcards. But my story ended there in 2018, and now we're in 24. I've added a lot more branches to my tree. So that's been thrilling. And then of course, as I said, the inevitable, down where I'm selling postcards, and I have been for a while. This is a picture of a booth I have at a really nice eclectic art and vintage and antique store in downtown Little Rock, in my little armoire where I have postcard files, as you can see, and some spinner racks, and sell a few vintage items on the side. But I've been selling there since this store opened, which has been 8 years ago. And that's a lot of fun. I don't have to be there all the time. They take care of it for me. And I just dust it and add new stuff every once in a while. And thankfully, make a little money from it. So that's one way that I sell. And I've been doing that the longest. And it's a lot of fun. Then, as was mentioned, I got to go for the first time to the Wichita Postcard Club show. First time in Wichita. First time as a dealer at a postcard show, and first time at a postcard show. So that was a lot of fun. And where I retired, I would go every year, but I'll get back a few times probably before I retire. But it was a thrill to meet so many of you who are on this call in person after having gotten to visit with you online. And it was a lot of fun to meet the other dealers, and I came home with more postcards. And I sold some, so that was good. And then I just recently started selling on eBay again. I did years ago. I sold all kinds of things on eBay, including some postcards. But now I decided I would get back more serious with it. And actually, just in the last 2 weeks, I've started listing and have sold some items on eBay. So that's the name of my eBay. I don't even really have a whole shop set up. It's just the name of my account there, and having a lot of fun with that. And I have speaking of Facebook group, like I was talking about, I have a Facebook page that I would love for anybody to follow. I occasionally post there with things about postcards. So that's really it. So that's my journey and where I am these days. And, who knows what's going to come next, but I've certainly happily become an accidental deltiologist, and can't wait to see what's next. So that's the end of my presentation, and I will stop sharing.
Very good. Thank you, Ashley. That was terrific. Just, I love your booth and the little thing at the top saying postcards. It just looks so inviting, shelves and boxes and
I have a stool there. I have a stool too, so people can sit and look through the files. That wasn't shown in the picture, but that is helpful. So you can
that
sit.
helps. That really does. Right. Bill Burton, if you'd please unmute yourself and tell us if we have any comments or questions from our audience. And other people are welcome to unmute yourself too, so we can have some little visiting here. Bill?
Okay, thanks, Al. Dolores Rowe, who knows a bit about having fun with postcards, wrote, great fun, great job, and what fun seeing how your journey has progressed. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Dolores.
And that's really good. Kathy Alpert writes, and this is getting a little bit more technical. Wonderful presentation. Do you happen to have any postcards of Blass's department store?
Well, I know Blass's department store well, and I feel like there has to be downtown Main Street postcards that have the Blass's sign in it. Who asked that question? I need to get back to you and see if I come across.
Hi.
Oh, Kathy.
My
Hi, Kathy.
great-great-grandfather founded Blass's. My mother grew up in Little Rock.
Oh my goodness.
I live in
Wonderful.
Massachusetts, but my mom's from Little Rock.
Well, wonderful.
Terrific.
I'm scrambling on my desk looking for a piece of paper to write that down. Well, let me happily do a search for you on that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for telling me, Kathy.
Such connections. Wow.
Oh,
I actually have a little postcard from Little Rock, mailed to Toronto in 1905.
Do? Oh,
Wow.
I posted that
yeah.
on the Facebook group.
Oh, wonderful.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
So sorry,
Ashley,
let's see if you can see that. Right.
Well, yeah, I see that. It really isn't it. So you say you have posted it on the group? I want to look at it more.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want it, it's yours, Ashley.
Jerry Danileo writes, How many cards do you have in your Little Rock collection anyway?
I've never counted. I don't know. I'll show you. This is my binder, and like 3 to 4 cards per page. And I do have the ones that are just Arkansas ones too, but there's more just straight Little Rock. So that's something I'll have to count and see. I bet I have. I mean, I easily have 100, I think.
I bet so.
Yeah.
That's so.
Yeah.
Mark Moss writes, you have an interest in collecting any postcards which have absolutely nothing to do with Little Rock or Arkansas?
Good question, Mark. As far as ones that I'm like keeping,
I'm just curious now.
Just
I
throwing
have
it out
some
there,
that pass
Ashley.
through my hands that I hold on to for a while, but I'm willing to sell. That I have some that like I have a Santa one now that I came across this last year that I've just decided to let live with me and enjoy it this year. But I guess not, Mark, because that's a slippery slope. I just can't. Well, I do have a little collection of the postcards with slogan cancels on the back. So those aren't Little Rock related at all. So there's the answer. I do have a little collection of those.
Well, we're all sliding down that slippery slope, Ashley. So I just wonder how you will manage to avoid it.
It's not my nature to avoid that. I think that's why I needed a selling outlet, or I would just be surrounded by them, as y'all can probably relate.
Well, good for you.
Thanks.
Morgan Williams
I had a
writes,
question about the postmark. You said Silver Springs.
Yes. I have the book right here.
Curious. Silver Springs is southeast of Buffalo. It's just a little.
I'm sorry, I got the name wrong. Silver Creek.
Oh, Silver Creek is on Lake Erie.
Okay,
That's
Silver
over in-
Creek, New York.
That's over in Chautauqua County, and it's a beautiful town. And but it's right on the lake, and its
Okay.
only claim to fame is it gets as much snow as Buffalo gets. And other than that, it's just a tiny little spot. Why Silver Creek? I mean,
I know. I don't know. I need to try to figure this out because I'm really curious about it. I wonder if they were just a test site for this company who made this mark or made the machines this mark was on, Columbia. Because I did a little research into Silver Creek at the time I discovered this and thought maybe they had some reason why the diamond shape or the star in the middle would be important to them, but I couldn't find it. It doesn't sound like you know either.
no, it's on the main line of the New York Central, or the old New York Central, and it's just a tiny little town now. It's just interesting that they chose that particular place.
Maybe it
Well,
was the
wonderful thought.
hometown or where their grandmother was or something. You never
Yeah.
know.
Never know.
Morgan Williams says, I suggest that you expand your collection into Hope, Arkansas, where they have watermelon festivals and large watermelons and exaggerated melon postcards. Smile. Morgan?
Yes, I'm well aware of Hope and their watermelon festival and some famous people who have come there. And I see those exaggeration cards come through my hands, but I don't think I need to start collecting them. Thanks for the suggestion.
I have a question for you. Most collectors that I'm aware of have a lot to do with getting cards that illustrate certain streets and businesses and experiences of the town that you could write in sort of a history. But yours, I can't remember somebody else who's collected actual ephemeral, antique, etc. items in association with your collection, which I find really very interesting in terms of its collective power with the postcards to evoke and create an atmosphere maybe and information about the town, which could lead to a lot of interactions with different people, different collections, installation. I mean, it was just an interesting component of your collection. Do you have anything to add to that? I mean, to talk about?
Yes, I do. Yes. Well, and you're right. It is. I mean, I didn't know how anybody else started collecting postcards. I just knew how I did, and it did start from that locus of the hotel, and it expanded as I showed. And so what I'll say about it is that now in the last, well, it started in 2020, a developer bought the Lafayette Hotel building, and COVID slowed down their plans, but they are turning it back into a hotel. The upper floors, people who own their condos, they're going to stay there, but the rest of the building is going to be turned back into a hotel and added amenities to it, but keeping the historic structure and fabric. And I've talked to those developers, and I met with them shortly before COVID got really bad and showed them all of my items that I had, because by that time I had moved out of the hotel. We're no longer living there. When we lived there, I had these things displayed as best I could in our little place, because I was living in the place where these things came from, right? So it made sense for them to be displayed there while we were living there. But when we left, I don't have them displayed where we live now. So I met with these people who were trying to get into a hotel, and I said, look, these items really need to be in the hotel. And so things got stalled because of COVID, but I've talked to them again recently, and there's no commitment yet, but it sounds like they're interested in building a place to display these items in the lobby, which is exactly where they need to be, and us working out some kind of loan agreement or something. And nothing would make me happier, speaking of an environment and evoking a feeling. I would love for these items to be there on display, so visitors and residents could look at them. And y'all have probably been at historic hotels or other places where they have similar types of displays of ephemera. I mean, I have covers, I have, philately, I have covers, I have all these other things I said and more. And they're just sitting in a box in my closet now. And I would really like for them to be there, protected and on view. So that's where I hope that leads.
Okay, Alan Milbrandt writes, Elvis Presley appeared in the Little Rock in May 1956, causing pandemonium. I believe he appeared at the Robinson Auditorium. Does Robinson still exist?
Yes, yes, and yes. And I know, I'm trying to think who it is. I know somebody who went to that show. I have to think about who that is. I've heard that. Yes, Robinson does exist. A wonderful historic performance hall, and in recent years went through a multi-million-dollar renovation and enhancement to update it with all the sight and sound and all kinds of things. And it is an absolute gem in Little Rock, and really proud to have it. And I have lots of postcards in my binder and for sale at my booth of Robinson. There were a lot of postcards made of Robinson. A lot of famous people played there. Thanks for knowing that.
George Everhart wants to know if you have any postcards of the Clinton Presidential Library.
I do. There have been several of those made too. Yeah.
Okay.
And they sell, that's nice. Their gift shop, as a lot of museum gift shops do, they have postcards of the museum and of lots of things related to Bill. Speaking of Hope, Arkansas, they have those, yes.
I misattributed a comment about Elvis Presley to Alan Milbrandt. It's in fact Alan M. from London.
Oh, my God.
Just to make the record straight. Sorry about that, Alan.
Well, Alan M. from London, that's pretty amazing that you knew that about Robinson and Elvis.
Maybe he's an Elvis Presley fan.
So I was interested in the title, Hal. I'm a Toronto Postcard Club person too, but just on another topic, the accidental Deltiologist. I don't know, is there really any other kind? Did anyone here decide one day that they were just going to start collecting postcards? And it seems like we had a meeting like this in our club a few years ago, asking how did people start, and everybody had a story, about getting into it accidentally.
That's
and no one had a story about saying, I decided to do it deliberately.
Fair point.
Yeah. Well, because of course we were wondering, like everyone is, how to get new members. So we were trying to ask, how did we join? And how do you get people to have those accidents, right?
The Philatelic Society, they have a lot of Boy Scout badges, and they have activities specifically for them to collect stamps, and they have a badge for collecting stamps, and there is SOCIS, an association of scouts for philatelic, but nothing about postcard, unfortunately.
That's true. There was nothing like that. There was no postcard badge.
No.
It's a big miss.
Still there isn't.
Morgan Williams asks, how did Little Rock get its name?
Well, that's a story for a whole nother presentation. There it has to do, the short story is the Arkansas River runs through Little Rock from, I'm not going to get it right. The Arkansas feeds into the Mississippi. Okay. Mississippi, we all know the Mississippi. So early explorers used obviously natural points for navigation guides. So as explorers were traveling up the Arkansas, like coming from the Mississippi, going up the Arkansas and coming through Little Rock, when they had come through the Arkansas in the eastern part of the state, it's flat. Not a lot of change in height of the topography. Well, you get to Little Rock and that's where it starts getting hillier and rockier and along the river. And so they noticed a little jut of a rock out that was a navigation point. They called that the Little Rock. And then just a little bit further upstream, there was a much bigger rock. And so honestly, the French called it La Petite Roche, the small rock. And that's where the city grew up, was around that little rock, because it was easy to moor boats to, and a good landing spot on rock for boats and all that. So that's how it got its name.
Very good.
I've just got one question. Ashley, when you were in Wichita, did you get teased about referring to the Arkansas River?
Oh my, that teasing started when I joined the Wichita Postcard Club, long before I got to Wichita itself in person. Yes, it's an ongoing tease. In fact, I went to school in Emporia University. And so I had experience in being an Arkansan, living in Kansas, and having to put up with the just absolute irritation of people calling it the Arkansas River and Arkansas City when I knew they were saying it wrong. And they knew they were saying it wrong, but they did it wrong anyway. So anyway, yes, that's the ongoing joke here. And I bite my tongue, and every once in a while somebody teases me just to get this red hair flared up. But yeah.
Well, didn't they have to pass a legislative act in Arkansas to have it pronounced Arkansas? Because it was being pronounced both ways?
There's something to that. There's something to that. And I have heard recently there are good reasons historically why they're pronounced differently in the different states. And it wouldn't surprise me if there was something on the books about the pronunciation.
All right. Well, consider yourself teased. Have a good one.
Thank you. I can take it. I can take it. If y'all can take it back, I can take it here.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I got one more. I'm thinking of the collection that you have represents architecture and streets and such, and then the Elvis Presley reference, and then the river reference. And I'm thinking, was there a river industry? Were there industries? Was there an entertainment world in Little Rock? I'm sure there was, but were cards made of that kind of stuff, so that in a way you could flesh out different aspects of Little Rock through postcards and create a broader narrative, say, than what I would call maybe your launching pad that you have right now.
Right. The river, of course, the reason that city came up around the river because it was the highway of the time. And so obviously there was river traffic and trade and all that. I don't know that there are specific river industries beyond just what the river made possible in terms of industries for commerce. There's a district of Little Rock in downtown Little Rock, it's 9th Street district, that has a good and a sad history, and it has to do with segregation. And the African-American folks in Little Rock set up their own basic downtown along 9th Street, thriving businesses, thriving scene in a big way, including music and their music hall. A lot of very, very, very famous musicians, African-American musicians, came and played there. Big history there. And of course, lots of things happened to kind of shut that down, unfortunately, the whole scene. But I have never seen postcards related to those musical acts and to that history there. I've seen ephemera, but not postcards advertising those acts. So doesn't mean they don't exist. But I appreciate you bringing that up, David, because, and I haven't seen anything specifically about Elvis on postcards and his appearance either. But you know, that's a good idea. That would give me a different way to think about my collection and what I could maybe, some history narratives I could tell through postcards about Little Rock's history. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, let me add one thing. I can't remember his name right now, who has the Museum of Deltiology. I know everybody here will know it except me.
John Brown.
Yeah. Yeah, he did a series of photographs of, I think it was the Capitol building in Pennsylvania, the legislative building, and it was in different season with squirrel, and he made a calendar of cards of the same building in different seasons and made a calendar out of it. And I thought, that is just freaking beautiful. I love the idea. And the idea, I guess, broadly speaking, I'm just thinking of what kind of expansion can this energy for collecting and your taste for the history, take in postcard form and maybe adjacent ephemera.
Well, I appreciate your energy about my energy. I have done a few side things. I do in my little booth. I did over the years. I've taken, these postcards that are old enough. There's no copyrights anymore. The big letter postcards, particularly, are great images, as we know. So I scanned those and I printed them out on iron transfer paper, and I transferred those images to old feed sack and cotton sack fabric and made dish towels out of them and sold them for Christmas gifts. And so they'd say, welcome, or greetings from Little Rock, greetings from Arkansas, and nice dish towels, just as nice gifts. And they were really popular. I haven't done it in a while because it takes a little time to do it, but I've done those kind of things where I've tried, and also I make greeting cards out of antique postcards too. And so I've tried to think of ways to make postcards relevant and into something that people might find interesting, to kind of at least champion, postcards being relevant in different ways than what we think of them as. And so I'm always open to new ideas like that, but I appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah. One last thing. It just occurred to me. Once again, I'll rely on people to help me here. What's the company that does all these small town books of postcards? Arcadia. Yeah, I wonder if they've done one on Little Rock.
Yes. The other person I mentioned, knowing one other person who's a postcard person in town, a man named Ray Hanley, and his brother, who's now deceased, began collecting RPPCs as kids in Arkansas. They have I can't even imagine how big this collection is physically, but they have produced several Little Rock books, many, many Arkansas city books of small towns, as you mentioned, that are just fully informed by their postcard collection. It's incredible. And I have several of them back here on my shelves back here that are just amazing, including my hometown. Other people, not just him, but other people have too. But there are a lot of those types of books about Arkansas as a whole and Little Rock and small cities, and they're wonderful.
But knowledge that lives in all these postcard clubs and the cards that exist of stuff that doesn't exist in any other form is staggering. I mean, there's as a resource, as a thesis, projects for graduate students, it's endless. I mean, what you've just said about these people, I think, oh my God, would I love to visit these people.
I would love to get Ray to speak to any of our clubs so we could record it. I don't know if he would. He's published a lot of books, but I would love for him to speak. And I'm sure he's going to donate his whole collection to.
Sign me up.
I know, we do.
Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. We had a good turnout today, one of the biggest. Thank you, speaker. Ashli, we very much appreciate your bringing everyone together today. And we're hungry for ideas. We're hungry for more stuff. So somebody had a hat the other day, says, I'm a curator, not a hoarder.
I love it.
I like it.
We all need one of those, I guess.
Or how about this? It's not hoarding. It's not really hoarding if it's cool stuff.
Thank you all, and happy
for the interaction.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Thanks for the interaction. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.